Welcome to Pixel Pizza,
Did she say pizza?
your ultimate source for chiptunes, video game talk, and pepperoni. Delivered to you from Los Angeles and into the digital cyberspace of the 2020s.
Pizza power!
That's right, one super giant pizza.
I want a large, thick crust with double cheese, ham, pepperoni. Hey, where's my pizza? Pizza time.
Welcome back to the Pixel Pizza podcast, listeners. You just heard from our chiptune artist this week, Hypervolt, and that track was called Chrysalis. So, hope you enjoyed that one. And now we are here with our interview portion of the show. I am very excited to be speaking with this week's guest. She is a Nebula Award-nominated and BAFTA longlisted narrative designer and writer. You may know her work from Pacific Drive, League of Legends, and Hello Neighbor. This is Karrie Shao. How are you doing, Karrie?
I'm doing great. How are you doing?
Great, thanks. So I like to start off the show by asking, Karrie, when in your life did you know you wanted to work in games?
Oh gosh. I guess I can actually surprisingly answer that very specifically, and that would be the sophomore year of college. So I was always someone who was, as a kid, like always creative, really wanted to write and really wanted to express myself creatively. But like many of us, we don't understand that to be a career. And certainly by the time I was applying for college, like working in video games didn't seem like a thing people did, right? It was just kind of this mystical thing that happened.
Yeah.
I understood that people made movies and wrote TV and wrote books, but like, I don't know, video games just seemed to spring from the ether. And maybe that's because I was mired in mostly Japanese games at the time. But anyway, I went to college to do what I thought might be a respectable career, and I majored in engineering. But by the second year of college, I knew that the career path from there at my school was working in national labs or being a civil engineer or doing a lot of things that I just could not see myself doing, both interest-wise and skill-wise. And so at that time, I started applying for film and TV and video game studios just to try to get in somewhere. And so I guess it was then that I knew I wanted to pivot creatively to games or entertainment, although the ability to actually join the gaming industry did not come until about 4 years out of college, so like 6 years later.
Is there any knowledge from the time you spent studying engineering that's been helpful in your work?
Surprisingly, yes. And I'm really happy to say that because I had this like moment of guilt, right? Where I went to a private school, which was really the most expensive thing ever. And so I was like, am I about to burn 4 years of my parents' money and 4 years of my time, like just wasting everyone's time, right? But luckily, video games really are in its core software development, right? They're big engineering software development projects. And so I was lucky enough to go to a school where the engineering degree was a general one. So we were forced to take mechanical, electrical, chemical, digital, all the things in order to be a more well-rounded like person and like like whatever in our education. So luckily it did kind of end up working backwards. Like there are not necessarily exact skills that I use that I, took a class for now that I'm in my career 15 years, but the breaking down of a problem into its constituent parts and being more technically minded has really paid into understanding software development, which is video games. I also happen to write a lot in the realm of science fiction. And so there are many times where I will go into scientific papers and tech papers to understand what the hell I'm talking about. So it has summed up together in the end into what I'm doing now.
Totally. It's so cool when you can infuse your left brain and your right brain into something.
Yeah, I've been really lucky and satisfied, and I don't know if that's kind of like a lifelong thing you realize, where you look back and you're like, oh, my path makes sense when I look back. But when you're
Yeah.
going through it, you're like, I have no idea what I'm doing, you know?
Oh, yeah,
So
I've been
yeah,
there.
yeah, still there.
Wait, you mentioned writing science fiction. Was that something you were doing before entering the game industry as a hobby, or was it something
Yeah.
that came? Yeah.
Yeah, I have it's really funny you have these like foundational moments where you look back and you're like, ah, I see the thread from when I was a child, but
Yeah.
I have, these handwritten in cursive on lined paper, science fiction and fantasy stories that I was writing as a kid.
Hmm.
So I've always been writing both just for myself personally and then, moving into fan fiction when I got a little older. And
Yeah.
then right before, or I guess like during also the time I started writing in video games, I wrote four novels. So I wrote four manuscripts.
Wow.
And that was kind of my training and my also exercise in creativity. And that, yeah, all primarily science fiction fantasy genres.
Yeah, I was a cursive kid too. I thought I was so much more sophisticated and knowledgeable in middle school because I was writing in cursive and all the other kids were just writing in normal handwriting, but ultimately I realized it doesn't matter. So I stopped.
Yeah. And no one knows how to read it now these days, right?
Yeah, true. Did you ever do the National Novel Writing Month?
I've always wanted to. I'm really impressed with everyone who does it, but I've
Yeah.
learned that my process is not like I cannot write in a month's time. I ended up when I was writing my novels, I subscribed to Stephen King's method of writing something in 3 months, and that felt like
Mm.
a better cadence for me to actually get something done in the quality that I wanted it to be.
Oh, yeah. I've always wondered how he was so prolific, but that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, have you done NaNoWriMo?
No, I've also thought about it, but never took the plunge. I have friends who
Yeah,
have, though, and it's, yeah, really admirable, really cool what they were able to produce.
yeah, I think it's great. And I think it's like, I'm sure I would learn a lot doing it. I think by the
Yeah.
time I heard of NaNoWriMo, I was already like trying to write for a little while, write novels full time. And so I thought I would do myself a disservice by forcing it out in a month just because I don't
Hmm.
write at that cadence.
Well, yeah, it's not dissimilar to a game jam, which has definitely been something that I've done has been helpful in learning the whole process.
Yeah, it's sometimes really great to just beat it out, right? Like I
Yeah.
did not, because I studied engineering, I don't have a lot of formal education in writing, like in the traditional sense.
Mm.
So doing these things, whether it's game jams or NaNoWriMo or just writing your own projects or anything, Twine, like working on these projects in whatever form they come to you is training in the end. And so they're all really good to do. And whatever life hack you need to use to make yourself
Yeah,
get through with it, like it's totally always worthwhile.
absolutely. So I know writing was not your entry into the games industry. I know you did some production and marketing work first. Which came first?
Let's see. It would be production, and actually, it was production first, and then by a hair, writing entered the picture. And so my first job happened to be at Riot Games, League of Legends, and this was back in 2010. So the game was out, but it was pre-season one, and it was not the like
Mm,
juggernaut it became. Still very much startup culture, still very much like how do we get anyone to care about our game time in that era.
yeah.
And so I came on as in the production department as a production intern. And luckily, I had friends there and a really supportive group of people where I said, "Hey, I'm interested in writing." They said, "Send over a writing sample," and then that's how I became both the producer on the narrative team as well as a contributing writer. So I did both at the same time. I was writing as well as doing production.
That's so cool. What is the narrative process like for that game? Because they're always introducing new champions with their new backstories.
Yeah, I can speak to what it was 15 years ago. So
Sure.
it's completely changed. The
Yeah,
game's
I can
gotten a little
imagine.
bigger since then, right? They are
Hmm.
they are now Riot Games, and truly with a plural.
Yeah.
But back in the day, it was the writing team was about four people, and only one of those people was like purely full-time devoted to the creative department. So that was Sean Carnes. He came from Blizzard and did so much foundational world building over at Blizzard. So he was an incredible mentor to have as that was my first time in games. But then the other three, me, Alex Yee, and David Dunn were all part-timers. Like we were all part-timing in other departments. So we would do things that were the pure thing we were hired for, which was, production and customer support. And then in our, halftime, we would write and contribute to lore. And Alex Yee, you'll know, is the creator of one of the co-creators of Arcane. So like he's been with it a really long time.
Wow.
He worked on a lot of foundational champions. So back in the day, like you're totally right. So they were doing the 2-month champion release cycle, which was really hectic. And so back then, even the time I was there, like the process changed a lot, right? But essentially there would be an idea for a champion that started either in a committee or submitted by a designer or someone else in the company. And by the time I left, those ideas would get farmed out to like a 3-person team, and it would be the champion designer, it would be a narrative designer, and it would be a artist. And that little strike team would ideate on characters and ideas and art and kind of like flesh that out and, put it into play tests and bring it to committees and feel it out from there. And there were many of those strike teams, right? Because if you imagine a champion has to come out every 2 weeks, then everybody was loaded up with many champions at a time.
Wow, that sounds intense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was really intense but fun, right? We got to do that. And then the lore team wasn't just trying to be on this champion bandwagon. We were trying to look for ways to make a very hardcore player base care about lore and world. And so we experimented with a lot of different things. We tried a in-game newsletter, right? So like, extra, here's the Runeterra report. It was called the Journal of Justice. Mm-hmm. And so we tried that, and we tried tying that into marketing beats and, other things. And it was a really fun time to just try a lot of stuff and see what stuck. And, nowadays, like they are doing little graphic novels, comics, side stories, side missions and events. And they've expanded lore in a lot more ways than what we had back then.
Yeah. I mean, it's been incredible to see how they've built out the world across different forms of media now. But I can imagine at the time trying to figure out how to get players invested in the story in a game, just the game without the traditional story mode. Must have been an interesting challenge.
And I think it's something they're clearly still working through today, right? They're doing a lot of things, but the question is always like, if we are paying this many people to work on this full time, is the effort worth the return we're getting on it, right? So that in-game newsletter I mentioned that we worked on, ultimately, it was decided that the click-throughs, right? Like you could see the number of counts and the amount of time people spent on that page didn't really amount to what they thought we should be spending our time on. So I think it's a constant recalibration of testing. But I will say, like, starting there at Riot, in a company that's very design forward, was really good training ground, right? I think coming into games narrative, we all have games where we really love the story, but in the end, it really comes down to like what you are doing with your controller as you experience the story. And so I've taken that lesson with me throughout my entire career, where story is there to support gameplay. And again, even if it's a narrative game and you're just telling a story, like the what you do with the controller is the top priority, and you weave narrative into that and you give it meaning. So it was a really good challenge, and one I still reference a lot. A lot of the lessons I learned from there, still use them to this day.
That's so great. So one of the other things that you've done across your career is marketing, and you've done some big releases like Psychonauts 2 and some more niche titles like BlazBlue. And so how do you sort of cater your marketing approach based on the scope or the audience of the title?
Yeah, that's a great question. For all those jobs, I was a freelancer, and for the stuff I worked on aside from Tiny Build, I was like at an agency side, right? So it was very much it depended on what the client wants. So for Psychonauts 2, I was really lucky enough to work with Double Fine and produce their events. So we did E3 and PAX booths.
Oh,
And
cool.
yeah, so I got to like build that from the ground up and do everything and just try to set everything up so the team could come in and demo and sell their merch and be completely supported in that. And so that was a very small kind of like piece of the pie, right? I actually didn't touch development. I definitely wasn't launching any giant marketing plans for them, but it was a key marketing beat that they needed extra arms in. So that was really cool. And for BlazBlue, that was a different situation in which like these are great like both ends of the spectrum examples because for BlazBlue, essentially for a time, my team was Arc System Works America. We ran the entire thing, combined with some other agencies together. And so BlazBlue Cross Tag Battle was maybe the first and only and also biggest campaign we got to run end from end. So we were there from announcement all the way to release, and we got to, with a marketing budget, determine what all the activities were that we thought would best reach the fans, like taking it to conventions and setting up demos everywhere we could and reaching the community and online and off. And so it was really fun to do that and like kind of expand in a lot of different ways across all the titles I helped, right? To just see how other people wanted to do it, to see how marketing titles no one cared about versus cared a lot about, like how they differed. And, like unfortunately, a lot of the time it was how you do a lot with sometimes zero budget.
Yeah.
But I think it all made me really flexible and capable, and also taught me a lot of lessons I use to this day about, when I'm more on the game development side now.
Yeah. Was there a particular time where you felt like you didn't have the resources or the budget for something you wanted to accomplish, but you found a workaround or some clever solution?
Oh gosh, all the time. I mean, you never have enough budget. Let me think about that. I think a really common workaround when the only budget was the budget given to us of our time, right? Like we have hired you for however many hours a month to promote this title. And we really stretched that to its maximum because we used it as an opportunity to develop our own agency's capabilities. So for example, for Arc System Works, like we carved out I guess we had like somewhat budget for that, but we emphasized having a budget to do a weekly live stream that we called Arc Live. And we, I think like our agencies, it's called Strangely Compelling Multimedia or SCM. But I think our strength was that we really put in a lot of work and maybe too much work into things that are like, how would you describe this? Like we go beyond with just like what the budget gives us, right? So we built for Arc Live, this weekly live stream, we built an entire set in the garage of our office. We, lit it ourselves. We bought the whole streaming setup and we did all the programming and we brought in guests, and the guests were really generous in that I think most of them came in unpaid, unfortunately, like for exposure. But it was a good opportunity to reach out to the community, and we did some announcements. We even brought some of the Japanese developers on the stream, and and I think it continues to this day. I don't think they're definitely not doing it weekly anymore, but the branding still lives on when they do live streams. And so I think it was just always like, what do we think is cool? What is something that we can build and use as a pipeline for future work, right? So if we needed live stream for anything else, we have all of the equipment now. And we got really used to doing that.
That's great. That's so smart. Yeah, I have seen Arc System Works do a lot of streams for Guilty Gear when they're announcing the new characters and like breaking them down, and that gets in a lot of people. So that's cool that you were sort of on the ground floor for that.
Yeah, it was an easy call at the time, right? Because at the time, and maybe even still now, like we all understand that it's really great to have company channels on Twitch, but the upkeep for that is ridiculous, right? Like you have to stream, you know this, like you run a podcast, but you have to regularly update. It is so much work. Sometimes you don't have stuff to say, or like it turns into like people's entire jobs to keep this thing running. And then you start to question like, is it worth the cost and everything?
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, thank you for coming on unpaid. I don't pay my guests. I don't have a budget, but I love talking to people.
Yeah, it's great. I noticed I was looking at your podcast. You have some really incredible lineup of guests, and it's always nice to, I don't know, have an opportunity to talk about the work and reflect. And I'm someone who doesn't necessarily like process the things I'm doing while I'm doing it. You know, it
Hmm.
requires doing a talk or being in conversation about it to be like, oh, yeah, that's what I'm doing. So these opportunities are really lovely, and I love that you feature just so many indie developers. So kudos to you for giving us an outlet for that.
Thank you. That means so much. I mean, not to jump too far ahead, but I know you've been doing a lot of talks at GDC and different events over the past year. How have you kind of formulated your thoughts about the development process and how you want to convey them to people?
Gosh, that's a great question. The series of talks I've done over the last year, I've been lucky enough to do like a really focused Pacific Drive talk at GDC this past year, which was a quick 30-minute blitz on how we how I solved the problem of making you care about unseen characters, right? So we play games and we know about audio logs or like characters that talk to you that don't appear on screen.
Hmm.
And Pacific Drive, there are no character models. So everyone talks to you through a radio and the player never talks back. So I got to like digest that and kind of summarize like what I did and why I did it. And of course I had reasons, but after, 3 years of challenging development, those things start to leak out of your brain.
Hmm.
So I did a talk for that. I think at GCAP, which is an event in Melbourne, Australia, I was really honored to give a keynote there, and I got to give like a career retrospective. And
Oh,
so
cool.
that one, I got to zoom back out and be like, okay, over the last 15 years, like what is my through line? What are the things that I learned, and what are the things that are common, and what are like the highest level lessons I can distill from this very tumultuous like time in my life. And so I think it's been really lovely to get to do that. I think the a big theme of my talks in the last few years, and also like my entire career, is this notion of trying to tell as much narrative as possible without words.
Mm.
And that is a really hard thing as a narrative designer where my job is words kind of. Um, and and a lot of the things you wish narrative, or sometimes narrative is the most effective when expressed through, is gameplay systems or artwork or music, and we don't have direct control over that, right?
Yeah.
So it's been a lot of like summarizing the lessons there and just trying to say like, what are the top level things you can do as someone who doesn't do these disciplines for a job? How can you try to make sure that you see these things happening, or what is important? Like if, going back all the way back to League of Legends, like if hardcore players, um, all they do is they log into the launcher, they go into the matchmaking, they get matched up, they choose their champion, and they play the game, rinse and repeat.
Hmm.
How do you make people like that care about lore, and like how much of the lore actually registers to them? And so, yeah, that's been I think my passion project
Hmm.
in my talks, is just to be like, try to challenge yourself to do this without words as much as possible.
Yeah, it seems like so difficult but so rewarding for the player to experience.
Yeah, it's really rewarding, and I think it's the thing that draws us all into games, right? When a
Yeah.
narrative hits, it really, you never forget it. It is more tactile and visceral to you than watching a film or reading a book.
Yes.
And therein lies the challenge.
Yeah. That's you articulated that so perfectly. People always have asked me over the years, why do you love game stories so much? And it is because I feel like I have a deeper connection to the characters and the emotional beats than if I'm watching a show where I feel like there's a bit more of a distance between me and the cast.
Yeah, you're totally disembodied from it, right? Like you are
Hmm.
essentially camera, and you're just looking at everyone do stuff. And
Yeah.
that's incredibly powerful to remove that distance. But then even when you remove that distance in a video game, there's all sorts of extra challenges, right? We still feel like we are better connected to, like a Nathan Drake or someone, even when it's like, I'm not Nathan Drake, but
Yeah.
I played his entire journey. I, pressed the button that made him punch or whatever.
Hmm.
And so really, like, there's a lot more we can do with video games in that sense.
Yeah.
It's just a really fun challenge to figure it out.
Yeah. So, getting into Pacific Drive, we mentioned this actually a little bit before the show, but uh, the pandemic influenced so much of how our processes have changed of working on stuff. And I know that that game was developed a bit during the lockdown. And so I was curious how, if that affected the process at all. And I know obviously the game has a lot of themes of isolation. So was that at all influenced by it?
Let's see. I would say that isolation is something that was in the lifeblood of the game to start. So
Mm,
the of the many influences that went into Pacific Drive, one of them was the Pacific Northwest and driving alone in a forest and how deeply creepy and isolating that can feel. Um, and so I think that was, probably the thing that screamed the loudest and made loneliness one of the highest pillars of the storytelling rather than the pandemic.
mm,
But yeah, I will say that like when I signed on to that project, it was probably the end of 2020. So we were in lockdown pre-vaccination, right? And
yeah.
so and that was when the project was essentially like funded in full to start like production.
Mm,
So I think that I feel like everyone on the team might give you a different answer, but I feel like I don't think it was the project was started to be like, hey, we're gonna like all be in person soon, right? And we're all gonna be able to like pile into an office and do this. Like it was kind of um the bulk of it was done in the year of pandemic. And I'd be curious to know actually, sorry to ask a question that
yeah.
no one can answer on this podcast, but I'm wondering if that like, year off essentially allowed the founding team to accelerate the development and pitching of it, or if
Mm,
it was coincidental, right? Like I know that the founding team, a lot of the people who worked on it had worked on it up to 2 years prior, and a lot of them had worked in AAA companies. And so I'm curious, like if the 2020 afforded them the ability to heads down and focus, or if it was just a coincidence that it all happened at the same time.
yeah, that's an interesting question. I don't know. I wouldn't know. Uh, and one of the other interesting storytelling challenges about the game is that it has a roguelike structure. And I feel like that is such, I'm always so amazed that when a story is really well told and pulled off in that type of game. So, how did you kind of build the story around that?
Yeah, I think that we did it a little bit like we did it in a way that I was nervous about until the game came out because
Mm-hmm.
even though our game is run based, it is we all the story primarily happens in the linear missions, right? So the game gives you a mission and you can go on it or not, and you can do as many, drives out as you want into the zone and never progress the mission, and you can have a great old time.
Mm-hmm.
There are gates in that if you don't, finish certain missions, you won't access like the next area, the next biome. But we try to keep it pretty light and doing that. And so and I'm glad it was successful, right? Because I think the early on there, I was thinking about like, do we want to switch this to what we all call like what we call the Hades model, sort of,
Mm-hmm.
where you are rewarded on every run with an extra narrative nugget, or if you go out on this run and you find a nectar, then you can pay that to advance story a little bit. And that's kind of to me like a more true leaning into the roguelike structure of storytelling in games, right? Like the systems are interconnected that such that every time you do a run or when you do runs feed back into how you get narrative. So we definitely split that, and that was the original intent, where linear story missions where you play through, go on as many runs as you want. And it did end up influencing storytelling structure because structurally we could tell the player like, hey, someone's life is in danger or something, but essentially they could play for 200 hours. And if they didn't do anything for that quest, like that person's life would still be in danger. And you would know that,
Mm,
mentally you would know that the urgency wasn't actually there. So having to be aware of that, where nothing the players asked of you, or sorry, nothing the characters asked you to do could be all that urgent because they will wait for you forever to
right.
get it done. And then, the awareness that like all kind of run-based games or persistent games, there had to be a way where you could continue playing it after the story was over, because the story doesn't go on forever. Sorry, spoilers. um, and like you needed a satisfying way to leave that open to the player. So it did have some kind of major structural story demands on the game.
Yeah, that's such a cool way to go about it. And another thing that really strikes out to me about the game, and to a lot of people that I've seen review it and talk about it, is that the character writing and all of the flavor text is very witty. And I was curious where your own sense of humor comes from.
Oh gosh, that's a great question. I don't know. Where does anyone's sense of humor come from? I think I don't know where mine comes from. I just know what I think is funny. And I will say, like, the primary examples I had for the tone of the game, like, actually goes back to your original question of, like, my where did I start writing and my education with like engineering, right? So um scientists can be they're very smart, but that means they're kind of just like wry humor and very dry sometimes. And there was like a very specific passage in a book, and I think it was literally a book about thermodynamics or something. It was a boring nonfiction, not fun story,
Mm-hmm.
but the first sentence of it says like, um, "Oh, this famous person studied thermodynamics and then he killed himself. This other famous person studied thermodynamics and killed himself. And now it is our turn to study thermodynamics."
Ha!
And then the rest of the book starts, right? And that's like
Wow.
to me, I'm like, oh, that is quintessential humor. That is all the people I went to school with. That's the stuff I think is hilarious. It's that
Yeah.
like juxtaposition of like really grim, serious, like we are so smart, we're like too smart. Um, and so that really informed how the characters kind of spoke. And, again, that's really reflective of my own humor and how I directed my co-writer Paul Dean, who wrote all of the wonderful item descriptions.
Mm.
We both kind of zeroed in on that sense of humor and tone.
Yeah, it came across so well. What was your collaboration like together?
It was amazing. Paul Dean, who is formerly from, like, he was a journalist for some time, and he also was from Shut Up and Sit Down, the board game YouTube
Oh,
channel, podcast. I don't know. That's not my world. But it was quite
me
popular.
neither.
I think it's still great. Okay, so I think it's still going. He's left that team long ago, but it was really, really popular channel. Anyway, he came on later onto the project. So initially, I was, a narrative team and writer of one. Ideally, I would have come in and just written the whole thing and designed all the missions and implemented it all myself. But my producers very wisely was like, um, I don't think you're gonna get to this all in time. And so they convinced me to like hire on a writer. That was Paul Dean, and start collaborating. And Paul is just one of the most wonderful people you'll ever meet in your life.
Mm.
He is just so effusive. He's just really open to feedback, and he is a absolute champion when it came to just writing tons of text, because there's tons of text in the game. Every
Yeah.
item, an object, an anomaly is scannable. It has a wonderful, incredibly written like voice to it. Every item you install in your car, every color of paint has a different item description. And so he came into our world, very much well established, and came in and worked, very independently based off of our documents, and then did such a good job that eventually he got folded into more of the design team. And kind of, as you're writing item descriptions, you need to talk to designers and figure out like what their intention was. And as what happens with game development a lot of times, the information you need isn't there, and you need to drag it out of people because they're really busy.
Mm.
So I think everyone on the team gets like an MVP award, but he gets my personal
Yeah.
MVP award of coming in just to write some text, getting wrapped up deeper into the team, getting wrapped up into Unreal Engine, and like, putting in the text himself. Like, he's a lovely person, and I'm so honored that I got to write with him and get nominated for some awards together.
Yeah. Congratulations again.
Thank you. It was a really, honestly, dream come true.
Hmm. So Another part of the game that you were involved with was the casting and the voice direction. Was that something that you had done much of before?
Yeah, I had been lucky enough to be part of casting and like voice sessions in, oh my gosh, I'm trying to think of how far back this goes. I guess I did this during my agency work. So for the Arc System Works titles, I
Oh.
got to sit on like a bunch of the recording for BlazBlue Cross Tag Battle. And oh my God, let me just tell you, like that was so cool because BlazBlue Cross Tag Battle is a game that takes puts together like characters from at the beginning four different series, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so we got to have the Persona 4 cast come in.
Oh my God.
And this was like, I think Persona 5 was already out at this time, right? So they're all some of the best voice actors working today.
Yeah.
They had not only put out their hit game Persona 4, but they had gotten to do the convention circuit and meet all the fans and collect all the accolades for it. So by the time we called them back to rehash these characters, like they didn't need to find the characters again. They knew exactly who these people were. And I got to sit in there, with their former voice director who that we recorded at the same studio they had recorded Persona 4 at, and just hear their stories. And literally in the middle of a recording session, one of the actors told us about like just these incredible experiences of meeting fans and fans telling them how much their characters matter to them, and like made me want to cry in the middle of our session because it was so touching. And so yeah, anyway, long story short, I got to be involved in that experience, casting and voice direction and all of that. So when the time came to do it for Pacific Drive, easy thing to do, and what a pleasure it is to be a writer and watch actors bring your script to life. It was incredible. They always make your words sound much cooler than they look on paper sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, was there ever a moment where one of the actors was reading your script and was like, wow, I never thought about it like that, or it just opened a whole new possibility for you?
Yeah, pretty much everything that came out of Tara Langella's mouth. So she was Oppie, our main character.
Mm-hmm.
Oppie is this like 80-year-old curmudgeon genius scientist woman who's, well past her prime and very bitter about everything. And Tara Langella would just deliver these lines pitch perfect, do them in a way that like matched what it sounded like in my head, which can be a dangerous thing, right? You're never going
Yeah.
in there telling the actors how you want it to sound. You're just hoping they get it. And literally everything she said, I was like, yeah, definitely. And when we were on break or in between sessions or having to redo some lines, she would just say things in the Oppie's voice, and I was like, oh my God, one marketing idea I wish we had been able to do is like start a TikTok with Oppie just like negging people, just like doing the
Yeah.
voiceover and recording people, because she is just so delightful. She understood Oppie entirely and knew the attitude and could just say anything, right? So
Mm-hmm.
I had such fun listening to everything that came out of her mouth.
Ah, that sounds so much fun. What has it been like since the game came out with all the accolades and everything?
It was a gift. It was really it was gosh, it was so interesting. It was a really hard game to release because it was Ironwood Studios' first game as a team.
Mm-hmm.
So we all had a lot of experience at other studios, but founding a brand new team and making your own tools from scratch and all of these things are really hard. And so by the time we launched the game and up until now, so it's been like a year and a half, I I don't know. I wonder if I'll ever get out of the surprise that people know about our game, right? Because you work
Mm.
on this game for so long in secret, and then you announce it. And I've been in this industry long enough to see that so many games get announced. What, like 70 games come out a week on Steam or something, and
Hmm.
they don't go anywhere. And
Yeah.
that's really not always a meter of quality of the game. It is just the industry right now. And so the fact that we announced our game, people know about it, people love it, and can cite lines back to me or quote things that happened is, I don't know if I'll ever like not be surprised about that in the best possible way. Like it's really a pleasure for me to get to have that. So I think all of the accolades have been, exactly everything you dream of. Like if when you're an indie, like this is kind of your biggest hope and dream is that it
Mm.
turns into something like this. And so few games have this happen to them, for the studios that when it's their first title, right? If you don't already have a reputation to build on, like this is really rare. And so it's been really educational. It's definitely been a nice kickstart for me to like help recover from burnout because I burnt out pretty hard by the end of the project.
Sure.
And it's been a really big balance of like, oh, okay, like so I have work out there and my writing that's out there in the world now, and I've proved to people that I can do it. So now what do I do with this newfound power and experience I have? Like what do I do to take this into future projects and whatnot? So it's been a wonderful ride from releasing the game.
That's so amazing. I'm really happy for you. That sounds like all the best things you could ask for.
Yeah, it is truly like that's what how I always describe it. I'm like, it was kind of just the dream. This is
Mm.
exactly what you want as an indie studio, and I'm so lucky to have been a part of that from the development side. Right, because I joined League of Legends, but the game was already out,
Right.
and all the other projects were not my own. So it was the dream.
Yeah. And you mentioned something I'd like to dig into a bit further. So when you do face burnout, how do you recover from it?
Gosh, I wish I had a great answer. I think for me, I was very lucky to be able to take time off. I think the biggest thing for me that burnout was, um, it was a lot of like understanding what burnout really was. I thought it would just be, I am so tired. I am just really tired, like sleepy tired or exhausted or like I just
Mm.
ran a marathon. But what burnout really was for me was like a a whittling down of my ability to do anything. So I'm generally a very high productivity person, when I'm focused. I, did like my marketing job part time with my other stuff, writing novels or working on dev projects. And
Mhm.
so I'd never had issue with high output again when I was focused. But during the course of Pacific Drive, and it wasn't just because of Pacific Drive, I rolled onto that game from like four other games I was working on at the same time. Um, and I just found myself unable to do stuff. And it wasn't like, oh, I don't have time to do it. I have all day to do it. And I'm just like
Mm.
emotionally, I can't. And there's nothing more important than this, like my team's counting on me. Pacific Drive will be the biggest stage that my soul writing has been on, but I couldn't rouse myself to do it. It was really hard. And so I think recovering from it was just rest. For me, it meant avoiding deadlines for as long as I could. And I, again, was very lucky that I was able to essentially not do deadline based work for over, a year since release. And again, I think like I don't know what I would have done, how recovery would have worked if we also didn't get like the accolades because
Mm.
um right, like your feelings about a project or how hard you burn yourself on a project has nothing to do with how it's received. And so I try to divorce those two things of just like I don't want my feelings about this to be overridden because we were successful. I need to dig down deep and figure out for myself or just give myself enough time to I don't know, find my own way through it.
Mhm.
And again, I don't have the answer. I wish I did. If I did, I
Mm.
would sell it to everyone and make a
Yeah.
lot of money. But I think what helped was the game industry has been talking a lot about burnout recently. And then in the last 2 years, there were a series of incredible burnout talks at GDC,
Oh.
one by Liz Moberly and one by a whole panel of people the year prior. And it was just talking about like the clinical definitions of burnout. Again, it is not just being tired. It has to do with you feeling out of control with your environment, not properly being rewarded, overworked sometimes, but that was one tiny factor in like seven other factors that are out of your control sometimes. And so I think defining it and seeing my other peers go through it and all of that, like learning about it helped
Mhm.
somewhat. So yeah, messy answer, but the combination of things, mostly just rest and being away from work,
Yeah.
was necessary.
Those are super important. And
Yeah.
being able to hear from other people who have experienced it, 'cause it can be such an insular thing.
Yeah. And it's weird, right? I always think about like, oh, it's so weird that I feel better when I talk to other people about burnout or think, problems they're having on their projects. And I'm like, oh, I feel better because I'm not alone or I'm not crazy. It's not just something I'm causing, right? Or something. And I guess, humans are like communal creatures in the end. So
Yes.
just feeling like you're not alone can be enough sometimes. So yeah. Yeah.
Definitely. So this is the Pixel Pizza podcast. I have to ask, Karrie Shao, where is your favorite pizza place?
Oh, good question. Oh my God. Okay, hold on. I live in LA,
Me
so
too. Okay.
oh, you do? Okay, great.
Yes. We'll
Oh,
have to.
okay, so we can compare answers
Yeah.
then. Wait, I'm stressing. Hold on. Like 20 things just flew into my head. Hmm. Okay. Oh my God, I don't know. Um, oh, let me give you a weird one because
Yeah.
I don't have this one often. Is this true? Oh my God. So you just asked me a very simple question and I'm like stressing now.
No, don't worry. It is a hard
It's a
question.
very important question. Let me say this. My favorite pasta place in all of LA, um, and they do pizza as well, is a place called Fatto Amano. Wait, I'm gonna make sure this is the right name. Fatto Amano. Yeah. Fatto Amano, spelled like
Mm.
Mano, and it's in
Hmm.
Torrance. It's like very deep into Torrance, which is near where I grew up.
Hmm.
But it is this one guy. I like shit you not, his name is Mario. And he like runs the whole kitchen himself, so it's very slow, but he makes his own pasta in house. His pizza is like an Italian style where they ferment the dough for like 48 hours, and
Wow.
it is so good. And
Mm.
it is great. And it's like he's like a true Italian. Again, his name is Mario. He's got this like strong Italian accent. He has like this taller friend who works in the thing with him, and his name is like it's not Luigi, but it's like really close to it.
Oh.
And so it's so great that the dough is like just chewy and wonderful and really
Ooh.
puffy, and it's just really unique. So I would recommend people try that, except like call or order ahead because again, it's one man running the kitchen, and so it's not
Sure.
unusual to have wait times be like an hour and a half just to pick up food.
Ooh, okay, good to know.
What is your favorite pizza in LA?
Ah, that's so hard. I I mean my go-to place, I am up in Burbank, so it'll be a while before I get to Torrance, but there's a place they like. They have a couple of locations called Reno's. And
Reno's.
yeah,
Okay.
it's, very simple, very classic style pizzeria. Uh, they have a good uh let me, how am I going to articulate what I like about it? It's just, it feels nostalgic coming from New York, and the right, cheese to tomato sauce ratio is super important, and they do that well, and the crust isn't too thick, and yeah, I just really like it.
I will bookmark that for the next time I'm in Burbank.
Great.
Do you have like this running like poll of your guests voting on whether pineapple on pizza is okay or not?
I don't, but I should. What
You
is your
should.
stance?
No, absolutely
Mm,
not. I love them all separately. I will eat them separately all day. I don't want them together. But I'm not really like a fruit on my food person, but I love fruit.
yeah.
Like I will eat fruit all day also. So separate is great and yeah. Yeah, they don't belong.
Yeah, I love fruit on sweet stuff like pancakes or waffles or breakfast stuff, but with more savory food, I don't find it quite clicks for me.
Yeah. Anyway, you have plenty of guests. You update this podcast a lot, which I'm
Yes.
very impressed with you.
Oh, thank you.
Start like start the graph or start the pie chart of
Yeah.
like put the votes in because this is really important.
Oh, essential. So thank you so much for joining me today, Carrie.
Thanks for having me today.
Of course. So where can our audience keep track of you and your work?
Ooh, I am on Blue Sky, which I think under Carrie Bear,
Mm.
and Instagram under Carrie Burr, which is confusing. And yeah, I guess that's where everyone is these days, right?
Yeah.
LinkedIn is weird. And sure, I'm on there too. So I guess those couple places.
Yeah, I think those are my only three as well. So,
Yeah. I'm sad about the demise of Twitter, but I feel like it's actually helped me be on social media less, because it
yeah.
was so I guess that's good for my life.
Yeah, it was the easiest one to get sucked into, I
Hmm.
felt.
Yeah.
So it is a bit of a relief.
Yeah, and I would say keep an eye out for Pacific Drive stuff. We've been pretty good about releasing new content updates and features as we go, and a a really fun one is coming. So keep an eye out in the next few months or so.
Exciting. Keep an eye out for that, folks. And now we are going to hear one more track from our chiptune artist this week, Hypervolt, and that is called Soul Searcher. So listen to that one, and we will see you next week with another new Pixel Pizza.